Hello everyone, my name is Trish McCabe and welcome to Conversations from the School of Hard Knocks. This is the podcast where people from all walks of life will be sharing their stories and the wisdom they have gained from their life experiences. In no way is this show offering any kind of advice or counsel. These conversations will be of a very sensitive nature, so please be respectful in your comments and thank you for watching. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Conversations from the School of Hard Knocks. My name is Trish. Today, we're going to do a second segment with my friend, Rob. Welcome, Rob.
Hello, Trisha. Great to be back.
Today, we're gonna move in. We're staying on the covert narcissist subject, but we're expanding a little. Now, what we're going to be doing and going over is covert NPD abuse from childhood to adulthood. Love it. I think it's perfect.
Correct.
Basically, we're talking about our childhood. So, I'm going to let you go with this.
Okay.
What you were thinking about.
Basically, what I wanted to do was to cover, just kind of give an overview of what the whole covert narcissistic abuse looks like from childhood as it morphs through our life into adulthood, how we get it, or we get the abuse, I should say, and how we react to it, and how we bring that codependency, or you could pick up the traits and become a narcissist yourself. There's a split that happens in childhood from the abuse, and it seems to be that the more empathic type of people go the way of being the
codependent,
the abused, the survivors of this, and maybe the more stoic personalities become narcissists themselves from childhood abuse, usually from a parent or a caregiver. So what I wanted to do is basically do a brief overview of that, and talk about how it comes out, what it looks like, and how it morphs into our adult lives. And unless we catch it, it can give us create a lot of problems for ourselves in adulthood.
All right. We discussed quite a bit because, as we said before, there's so many layers to this. And so you had said you had a list of various points that you want to discuss, of various behaviors from a narcissist that you experience as a child, and how that affects you, I guess, for lack of a better way.
In general, how it affect, first of all, it's handed down. The abuse comes from, a narcissistic parent or caregiver that the child is with. And it's an insidious type of abuse. It's a hidden thing. Narcissists have two different personalities. They have the one in the public, the perfect self, and then they have the real self at home, where all the fury comes out, sometimes passive aggressively, sometimes aggressively into the physical form. A lot of it, though, is mental and psychological abuse that comes down the family chain, and it just keeps going and going until someone says, stop, this is not working, or something happens to where it's pointed out. NPD is nothing that gets cured. There's no known cure for it. So this is a very, very important topic for humanity, I think, to bring it out into the open, because it is hidden and it is so destructive. And we want to help. We want to help people. I know I want to help people.
Yes, absolutely. People to know they're not alone. We talked about this before. This is offering support to people. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because until you know what's going on, you think you're the problem, and then that drags your whole self-esteem, your sense of self down,
even further.
Even further. Yeah, I mean, life has its challenges enough, much less having your parent or caregiver just knock you down, daily. It's pretty horrific, really, psychologically, and does so much damage to, not only, children that have parents like that, but it goes into marriages, it goes into friendships, working relationships, family relationships. It's, the whole lot. So it's a very serious topic that needs to be brought out, and that's why we're here. So
That's why we're here. Yeah, you
that's
and
why
I
we're
were
here.
talking about some of the finer points, like the invalidating of you. I'm picking up one here where they say, like, I have a friend who said when he left home, his mom said, "You'll never make it in life." The words that they say, they stay with you. You don't think
Yeah.
it's affecting you, but it does. It hits you, and in your soul, literally. You're like, oh, you know,
Yes.
um,
Words have power, and that invalidation is part of the disorder, that they invalidate their kids. They'll say you'll never be as good as that. Why can't you be like so and so? Or you'll never make it to college. You'll never be this. You'll never be that. And it doesn't even have to be words. A lot of times it could just be a general overall attitude towards you, like there's something wrong with you. Instead of them lifting you up, they're bringing you down. And that negative overall general attitude is just as damaging. It's not giving to
yes.
the child. It's taking them down, which is the complete opposite direction.
And anytime
That a
I
child needs.
remember being little, uh, my parents would say something. If I said something good about myself, this is a big one that I heard a lot as a kid. Oh, you're just fishing for compliments. So anytime you say anything like positive about yourself, they're telling you that you're bragging, or, so then you just like, really, oh,
Yeah. Well, a lot
saying
of time.
anything good about yourself is a bad thing. So don't do that. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
you always got to be self-deprecating with a narcissist parent or, caregiver, because one thing, narcissists, they think that everyone else thinks like them, and it's been known that narcissists have, are horribly insecure. They're, horribly jealous of other people. If someone's got something more than them, then they're highly competitive to, especially things and stuff, So when they see someone doing good, they get insecure about it, and that insecure comes out just like that. Like, oh, you're trying to do this, you're trying to do that, and you're like, no, I'm just doing life. What's wrong with you? You don't say that as a kid. You absorb it as a
Yeah.
kid, and
Yes.
what else are you going to do? You're looking to your parents for guidance, and 9 times out of 10, like I said, it goes down the family chain. Their parents spoke to them like that, which doesn't make it okay,
But that's where it
but
comes from.
but that's where it comes from. And unless
Yeah.
you catch it, you're going to talk to your kids that way. And
Yeah,
it's
like
the
things like,
dysfunction. It's a gift that keeps giving. It's horrible.
they will embarrass you in front of people. They'll make fun of you, but in a joking way, and they'll say, "Oh, it's just a joke," but it's actually a slide. It's actually a dig.
Passive aggressive.
They'll,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
passive aggressive. Yeah, if you have a family picnic or whatever, they'll be like, they'll pick something they know you're insecure about to bring up to make you feel
Yeah.
uncomfortable and embarrassed a lot of
Yeah.
times.
Yeah. Once again, with the narcissists, always having to be one up on people because of that insecurity, that they can't even access it anymore. They've been trying to do a perfect self instead of their true self. That that that's what happens. That passive aggressive behavior comes out, and it's ugly, and they'll do it in such a way that it doesn't look so bad in public, but they know you personally, and they know it really cuts to your heart. Um,
One that comes to my mind too is the
I'll say
cold
that.
shoulder. You'll come into a room and they'll be quiet, and their body language and their attitude and how they look at you. also plays a role in that of, they'll turn their back to you when you're talking or,
Oh yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
that's a I'm better than you thing. And they always
yes,
got it, they got to always keep that position because of that insecurity. They can't just be like, "Hey, everything's cool. How you doing?" They have that thing, and that's usually because they see you as some sort of threat. Maybe you're a more authentic person, more empathic person. They're usually that way because you have something that they don't have, and they're jealous of it, so they got to be one up.
yeah. If you
And,
get
and that
attention or anything, oh no, like get, like I was, like you'll come in for breakfast in the morning and they'll, like I said, they'll turn their back to you. And another way that they do this is they'll pull the silent treatment and they'll maybe slam things around or grumble, and then enough to get you to ask them what's wrong.
it's a
And then they'll
it's
say, "Oh,
all
nothing's
right.
wrong," and they'll correct you. And so then you doubt
And you
yourself,
Yeah, and that's what they want. That's
Yeah.
ultimately passive aggressive control, and
Yes.
they want you, one thing narcissists, they like to keep you in a state of unbalance, with your emotions and your connection to them. And so they'll do that. The silent treatment is a form of control. And when you're trying to figure it out, because when you've had a narcissist for a parent, then what happens is you're always reading body language because you never know when the other shoe is going to drop, what's going to happen.
Walking
You
around on
know,
eggshells.
you walk around
Mhm.
on eggshells, and so they use that to their advantage. They'll be like, "Well, they're always watching me, so let me throw this little attitude here," and then I'll say, "No, I don't have an attitude." And they
Yes.
actually they actually get narcissistic supply from that, and where that comes from is because they have an emptiness inside that they have not resolved from old past childhood trauma, and it manifests in that way. So what happens is if you have this disorder, you're always looking for attention, always looking for external validation because you don't have internal validation. You don't know what that even looks like from the childhood abuse from when you're, a child, as a narcissist and developing it as you get older. So, yeah, that's where that comes from, and
Yes, and when they
it's
do
toxic.
that, they make you, we were talking about that you walk around on eggshells. Like you said, you don't know when the other shoe's gonna drop, and always setting the quiet thing, I think, is a big way that they do this, where they pull the silent treatment, but their body language says everything else. And then when you ask them, they say, "Oh no," they make it your problem. So they tell you you're paranoid or you're whatever. And so then you don't even know at that point. What I experienced is you don't trust your own judgment. You're like, wait,
Yes.
but you're acting
That
so
that's
strange
that's
and you
exactly where
don't
they
know what to
want you.
believe. Then you're just confused all the time, like, and getting
Yeah,
the mixed signals and all
and then
that.
what they'll do is they'll say, "Well, look at they're all over the place. I'm not doing anything over here." And well, why are they acting so crazy? They're the crazy one. So it's undercover, insidious, passive aggressive abuse, and you react normal. It's also called
That's where
react.
the like left-handed compliments or they'll bring something up they know you're sensitive about in front of someone, and that will trigger you and you'll get upset and like, "Oh, I was just joking."
Oh
You're
yeah, it's a
just
big
too
one.
sensitive. That's one they use a lot. You're too sensitive. And
No,
so
they're
then
testing
you,
you. They're putting
yeah,
themselves above you. They know exactly what they're doing. It's manipulation. They're master manipulators. That's a thing. Also, is that they exploit people. They're so exploitative. They manipulate. The lying is through the roof.
give me an example of the exploiting part. I think that's a really important
Well,
particular.
that we just went through it. Like when you're talking about, they'll have give you the silent treatment, and then they'll go and
Right.
say, "Well, hey, go and look at Trisha's getting all wild over there. They're exploiting you, they're exploiting your emotions,
Yeah, for
and
me,
by pointing it out
they
to
see what
others.
you're, yeah, they see this is how they do it. They'll be at this what makes you crazy with a narcissist is they're warm and they're kind and they're in a good mood, and you think, "Oh, maybe things are getting better, and they get you there just enough to open up, and they collect more information from you,
to use
things they can
later.
use against you. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
they're always plotting and planning. That's just the way the disorder works. And what they'll do is they'll feed you breadcrumbs to keep you hooked. Like you're
Yes.
saying, they're like, oh man, so and so's in a good mood. Hey, cool. And then before you know it, something weird will happen, and you're like, yep, there's that person coming
They,
out in all their
yeah, they
glory
stick it
again.
to you again. Yeah. As soon as you let your
Yeah,
guard down, a lot of times too, you relax. They are nice. You relax, and that's when they set you up. They'll embarrass
it's the
you.
push
They'll,
pull. They throw the
yes.
line out. They bring you back, and it's just it's a pattern that they do. And what you have to do is get away from these people if you can.
Left-handed, yeah,
You know,
left-handed compliments. That's
ultimately,
the other one I wanted to mention, because that's something that I've experienced a lot. I think we were talking about this before, where you'll come in the room and they go, "Oh, you're wearing that,"
right?
just enough to make you like feel like doubt yourself. And this could just be in any way, shape, or form, but just that sabotage of just
Yeah, it's a
pointing you out. Yeah,
backhanded compliment.
yeah.
That's and that just kind of shows you what's going on inside of them when they got to hurt other people. You know, they become hurtful. And then they need that exterior validation to make them feel better about themselves. It's a very dysfunctional way of doing life, but
Good
they're
word,
there.
dysfunction.
Yeah, it's very
Hmm.
dysfunctional, but it's the way the disorder works, and
And so
we're here
then
to
what
expose it.
happens is you're either going to become a narcissist or a codependent. And the
Exactly.
codependent, one thing about narcissists is they can read people really well. So they can tell if you're a codependent.
Yes.
And so they know what to do to put on the charm,
Yes.
and you have no idea that who they really are until you're in so deep. Because as once they get you in and trusting and everything in a relationship, then the real stuff starts happening, where they start doing that narcissistic, indirect, passive aggressive,
Narcissists,
all that.
their thinking is so different than typical people. They'll see someone with compassion or empathy, a caring person. They'll see that as a weakness. They won't see that as a strength, and they'll think, wow, okay, I that's one of those types of people I can exploit. They'll keep that in the back of their mind, and then they'll eventually end up doing it. They'll love bomb you like in a romantic relationship at first,
Mhm.
reel you in, hook you in, and before you know it, you're going up and down that roller coaster with these people, and it's never good. It never ends up good.
The narcissist can be um, charismatic. They
Big time.
really,
That's the false self.
yeah, they can really pull you in. And yeah, and so
They
I guess what we're
perfected
going to
it.
talk about is, going back to the childhood thing, and at some point you either become one or the other. I like to talk about what happens when you go the codependent route,
Yeah.
and how that leads you back on that cycle of choosing partners that are narcissistic,
Well,
basically.
yeah. If on the split you end up uh, with a more empathic being, you'll turn codependent, and what happens is later on in adulthood, that's familiar to you, being placating, to your parent or caregiver with NPD. So you're good. What happens is you end up getting, into relationships that are familiar from your childhood with more narcissists. You end up, some people get married and have kids with them,
The difficult thing, what you said, the word
so
they're familiar, is really big, because it feels familiar. You're like, oh, this must be meant to be, or this feels so right, when actually it's what's the word I'm looking for? It's rooted in your past experience, and that's why it feels
yeah,
so familiar and comfortable.
the dysfunction feels like home, you
Yeah, you're
know?
like, oh, this is how it is. That's the thing. When these things happen when you're little, you take
Yeah.
that viewpoint, like, well, this is just what it is in this world. And that's why I think the narcissist traits, sometimes empaths take that on too to survive.
That will
Normally,
happen. Yeah.
They learn this
When they're starting to put
manipulative.
boundaries up, some people will be like, am I the narcissist? It's like, no. If you're worried about you being a narcissist and you have that self-reflection of thinking I could be, you're definitely not, because one trait that narcissists do not have is the ability to look within, self-reflect, readjust, and do better the next day. They're stuck. They're stuck in like an emotional age of, 5, 6, 7 years old, and they're that way till they pass. It's always, my way or the high. Everything's rigid, everything's good, black and white, good or bad. That learning curve that we go through in life, it's not there for the narcissist. They don't have that capability. If you try to have a heart-to-heart talk with them, good luck. You might as well talk to a wall, because there's nothing there, because they can't internalize like that. They don't get their validation. It's foreign to them. They have a false self that they've been perfecting. This is why they can manipulate so well, and they have that charm, is because that false self that they have, they've been working at it, their whole lives, to be perfect, to be this ideal self, instead of accepting yourself as a normal human being with your flaws and everything, and accepting and loving yourself regardless. That doesn't happen with NPD. That false self is polished, and it's put out there. And there's, it's like the Wizard of Oz
They're
behind
very
the curtain,
crafty. They're very crafty.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
they're very smart. I hate to say them, like, in no way are
They've
we
had to be.
condemning anybody here. We're not
Right.
condemning. We're just talking just matter of factly about these behaviors on both sides. One thing that you had mentioned before was, when we talked before this, is the subject of boundaries, and how when you're little and you experience any kind of abuse, really, but narcissist abuse as well, is you learn that not to have boundaries. And that's how codependency continues, is
Amen.
We're taught to look outward for our sense of selves.
Yes.
And so then we don't honor what we're comfortable with or not comfortable with. We're told that, as how can I put this? I think you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, as children, we have our boundaries crossed daily
all the time. Yeah.
And so as adults, we allow it happening in our adult relationships. And it's different, because when you become an adult, you figure, well, I'm an adult now, and if things are different. But what's actually happening is these boundaries are getting crossed, and you're not even seeing it, really. You can see it, but you just let it slide. You let it slide. You let it slide. And that was an issue that I dealt with, as a recovering codependent. And it's just the way it is, and until you learn how to make those boundaries, you're going to end up with the same thing.
This is where the generational pattern gets passed down, of the be seen but not heard. We're taught as children to be seen and not heard. And
Absolutely.
So anytime we are heard, we're told to be quiet. So, and anytime we do express an emotion, we make them uncomfortable, and we're told, that it's bad and wrong. Emotions are bad and wrong. A lot that I've experienced, and others I know.
Absolutely. I know. Yeah. In childhood, a lot of times a narcissistic parent will say, don't cry. Don't show those emotions. They see
or I'll
that
give
as
you a reason to cry. That was another thing you heard. You better not cry, or I'll give you a reason to cry. So, oh, no. Or you'll get the belt or a spanking or timeout or whatever. And so you're not allowed to express your needs. You're not allowed to say what you're comfortable with. You don't even, if you try to go to your parent telling them somebody did something wrong, they don't want to be bothered. It's like, be seen and unheard.
So you what you do is you internalize and absorb all that crap, and you take it into your life, and you carry the world on your back. And I'm here to tell you, there's a better way to do life. If you're codependent dealing with this, there's nothing wrong with you. You've been acted upon since childhood. And there's a way out, and there's a better way to live your life than placating to dysfunctional people that have this disorder.
And that happens because we want love, so we want to do what we can to make everyone happy. When you go the empath codependent route, you take everything in, you internalize it, and the dialogue gets going from what your parents have told you. That gets going, especially if you're made fun of indirectly or directly or any of those things. You start to create insecurities, and they take a hold of you. So then we go at life people pleasing. And the narcissist
Absolutely.
loves that. It works perfect for
Yeah,
them.
they could, yeah, like you spoke about earlier, Trisha, about, your subconscious is programmed and primed for that, low vibrational type of thinking about yourself. And people with NPD, they're like, that's like blood to a shark, when they see someone that's kind of, you know,
Low
empathic,
self-esteem,
compassionate, low self-esteem, but they
always
got all these other things.
apologizing.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like, codependents, I mean, they could just, they could be the most successful people in the world, but they could still have that inner thing that they have had their whole life. And so it's not like codependents are these poor little saps. These are people that have been, abused in childhood, and taken it into their adult lives. And what I want to do is not have someone get into their 50s and figure this out,
like
like
like we've
like
had to.
me, right? I
Yes.
want to bring this up, learn it as soon as possible, teens, 20s, 30s, 40s, whatever, as early as possible. So those years aren't wasted on so much pain and dysfunction. And you could start focusing on building your own self and having healthier relationships in the future.
And that's because when these things happen, we're taught that everybody else loving us is more important than us loving ourselves.
Yes.
You can go around and ask people, you don't love it. You could say you don't love yourself, and they'll say, yes, I do. But really, we don't even know what not loving ourselves looks like, or loving ourselves. Loving yourself, to me, that I've learned at this point in my life, is doing what I want to do, what I'm comfortable doing, having those boundaries, honoring it. Doesn't mean I don't love the person, but this is where things get toxic. Because if for the codependent and the empath, if you're always taking care of everyone else and doing what everyone else wants you to do, behaving or anything else, you're living your life for them and not your own self. You end up resentment. This is where resentment comes into relationships, and
Oh yeah.
then the dysfunction sets in, and
Amen.
you've
It,
got
it builds, it
anger.
builds, it builds, and
Anger.
wow. Yeah,
Yeah,
big
then you
old.
blow up. Yeah, and that's really hard for an empath, because if you're holding in a relationship that's toxic, you blow up, then the narcissist has you. The more you blow up and the more emotional you are, they're going to tell you, they're going to deem you and make you look irrational and overly sensitive, and
Well, that's their
anger
pass.
issues, however they're going to
That's their
skew that.
passive aggressive way of
Yeah.
controlling you. Is
Yes.
like they're like, wow, look at how special I am. I could throw this person into a tailspin. That makes me significant. And that's one thing with people with NPD. It's a fear-based disorder. They have not had that significance, self-significance going on inside. That's why they got to get what's called narcissistic supply from the outside, from their outer world, from people, from others. And if they can abuse someone and it lifts them up and makes them feel good about themselves, that's a form of supply. And until you know exactly how this disorder works, you'll be just going crazy trying to figure it out. I mean, I went through it myself, trying to figure out what was going on in my personal life, and it was I knew that the pathological lying was there. I knew the word salad. I knew the projection was going on, manipulation, but I didn't know how it all came together and made a cohesive story and made sense until, I mean, it took me, I knew what it was, but I didn't know really how it operated till, I mean, I was in probably my 5th and 6th year of studying it, and studying it from professionals and doctors, and studying the DSM-5, and
That's great.
all these books I have, controlling people and psychopath free, and just learning how the human mind works, and not judging, trying to, I mean, that's the thing is people, until you get to a certain level of healing, the people take it personal and they get mad. It's like, hey man, this would, if it was, Rob or Joe or John, if then the circumstances were the same, it would still, that the narcissist would still react like that. It has nothing to
Oh
do with
yes.
you.
Oh yes.
So
This is
don't take it
where,
personal. Learn
yes,
about it.
this is where when you do illustrate a boundary, you're the difficult one.
Oh,
The
absolutely.
minute you
Because you're
start
standing up for
honoring
yourself.
yourself, suddenly you've got an
That
ego problem. They
that's a loss
project
of
their
control.
ego problem onto
Yeah,
you. Oh, you're the one with
you're
the ego problem.
jumping out of that cage that they're trying to put you in it all the time.
Yes.
And if you
Yeah.
jump out of that cage and you're like, hey, I'm out of here, they'll do a smear campaign, and
Try to sabotage you.
they'll sabotage how everyone else sees you. If you're out there like, hey man, this is crazy, I'm out of here, this is not right, you can't talk these things out, rational, which they can't.
Yes.
Yeah, they'll if they can't control you, they'll control how people view you. And
And when that's
they'll say
happening,
anything.
the best thing to do, yes, is don't react. The best defense is no defense. When you finally know what's going on, don't play into it. Cut off communication with someone like that, because you're not going to win. If you do communicate, they got you. They'll use every little thing you say to pull you into.
Absolutely.
They'll get you defensive. They'll push your buttons, anything they can to get you upset, and that's how they win. That's how they control you.
And absolutely. And not only do you got to pull yourself away from them, but the people that they've lied to, and they're all like believing them. In the survivor community, we call it flying monkeys, because they're like, yeah, we're part of your team. That person's horrible. So you got to cut yourself off with them too, and
Yes.
sometimes that could be family members, extended friendships. If you were, say, you had a narcissistic friend, you got, like, hey, I can't deal with this anymore. And they're friends with so many people, and they're kind of like, in their group, and you're like, oh, okay, we're just going to have to kind of like, distance yourself from that and see what happens from there. But yeah, it's so toxic. It's like a virus that spreads, and it's a shame.
Key thing in here that keeps coming to me is ownership. We're taught that children are owned to some degree with the narcissist thing.
Big time.
And
Big time.
and I'm, I've been in a situation where someone in my family was married to somebody that was a narcissist, and I wanted to break ties with the narcissist, and the family member doesn't want to. The family member is telling me that, I'm wrong, and how could I be doing this to them? And I'm like, your partner is abusing me. And so I cannot accept that. And there's this thing in the family unit that we've been taught that's a lie of, you owe me because I'm family. And no. That's just not true. I don't care who you are. If someone is abusive, you have a right to say, I'm not going to tolerate being abused anymore. And if it's a family member that's holding your relationship with them hostage and telling you that you have to have a relationship with this abusive person in order to be in their life, well, then you have to let them both go.
Yeah. You let them go, or you just keep a long arm, depending on your level of healing. If you're healed pretty good and you can handle gray rocking or keeping these people at a distance in that dynamic, the more power to you. But the best thing
I've tried to do that, and the family member will bring the person into a telephone conversation, will show up at my house unannounced with this toxic person, abusive person. It's a very tricky line. If they're not going to respect your boundary, you have to do what you have to do.
Right.
Whether it's a father, a mother, a brother, a sister, a child, your own child, you have to.
Narcissists narcissists are competitive. They see life as just this one big, huge game, and what can they get out of it? And they'll compete with you. They enjoy you competing. This is where when you cut them off, you cut them off at their knees, because you're like, I'm not playing your game. I was never
Mhm.
playing a game in the first place, but now I kind of realize you've been playing some sort of game, and it's not healthy, and I'm out of here. So yeah, sometimes you have to do that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Most that's the most healthy way to do it, is
Well,
to
that's
just
the big
cut it
lie
off.
we've been taught, to be loyal to family to our own detriment. That we're taught
No,
not to have boundaries in order to keep the family together. And that's not a family.
doesn't
Families
matter.
support and love and care and look out for one another, not harm each other.
Right.
And again, I don't say this, I'm not trying to say it from a bad place, but in a judgmental place, even it is what it is. If someone is harmful to you, whether it's a family member or not, you have to protect yourself. And see, this
Yeah.
is the thing that we learn in society. When we don't, we're so resentful and angry. And if you don't honor your boundaries, you're going to be miserable, because they're going to be
Absolutely.
able to just treat you however they want, and
They'll
you
keep
just have to
sucking the
put up
life
with
out of
it.
you. They'll keep sucking the
Yes.
life out of you, and that
Yes.
fills them up. That empty self that they're all trying to fill up and be on top of everything. They'll take, as long as you're giving, they'll keep taking. They have no qualms about that, obviously. So definitely, you got to put those boundaries, whether it's even as close as family members. Absolutely, I think that's why we have friends, because we can choose our friends. Family, not so much, until you got to really make a decision. And yeah, absolutely, that's definitely a part of it, for sure.
Yes, yes, and there's so much more. We could go on forever.
Yeah.
But I really wanted to talk about this codependent narcissist thing, and whichever side you end up on, what happens once you become an adult, and you, at some point, like us, you see this pattern. You're like, this person is kind of, I keep, this kind of person keeps coming into my life. What is that about? And then this is the most empowering part about all of this. You realize you're a part in it, which is the
Yeah,
only part you can do anything about. You cannot change a narcissist.
that's right.
You're never going to be able to change the narcissist, but you can look at your part in it, and you can go, oh, I make these choices, and look at, why do
And
I
this
choose
is
that?
it's yeah, this is something that I know that I did personally. I ended up marrying a narcissist, and getting through that, and still deal with that. But after that, I was dating, you know, a lot. So I was kept running into the same type of person, and I'm like, what's going on here? And so I had to look at myself, you know, as the common thread in this whole thing, and stop. I had to stop dating, because I didn't want to hurt anyone, and I wanted to make sure that I was good, and I wanted a healthy relationship. I didn't want healthy one day and then not healthy so much the next day. And so, yeah, I had to put my line in the sand, and um, that's where the boundaries come in. And until you recognize that you have this codependent thing going on, you're going to repeat the same pattern. You have to take accountability for your part in these in
Mhm.
these relationships. Um, Even though we didn't know what was going on, because it's an insidious underground type of disorder that comes up from childhood, and then turns into adulthood. We're the common denominator there, and we have to, until we look at ourselves, and that really came um, through learning about the disorder, and then the codependence, and how they kept attracting codependence. And I was like, well, I wonder if I have that. So I started like looking in. I'm like, holy mackerel, I have all these things, and I accepted that. You tell a narcissist, hey, you got this or that, they'll lose it. They don't like to, and it's not good to label, and but you want to kind of, if you want to grow in life, you want to know what about things and how they work. So you do that, you do that,
Introspection.
yeah, you take that
Introspection.
introspection, and you do the work. And the way you do the work is you first learn how to live in a healthy town. You start with, family members and friendships, and then you work into the, romantic and, other types of relationships.
I think the key thing here is what you allow is what will continue. If
And
if
then, oh, big
if you
time.
codependents want to understand, well, I hate to say I don't mean it like that, but like if you're in a relationship with a narcissist, be it family, romantic relationship, or whatever, the first thing to start doing is to just lay down some boundaries. Put in place what you're comfortable with, what you're not comfortable with. Then you're going to find out who's in your corner and who isn't. But most of all, you need to be in your own corner. That's where it starts. You have to be willing to put your love for yourself above anybody else's love for you. If what you're doing is just to get them to love you at whatever cost to your own detriment, where you're allowing that person to harm you, you have to take responsibility for that choice,
Yeah, and that's the tough part, learning to love yourself, because we were never taught that as codependents. We're just taught to react, basically, instead of, cultivating, self-awareness and self-love, and having those boundaries that come with that. So you're really learning life all over again. This is why I want to help people to get this early on and not later on in life, because there's a lot of work that has to be done. If you want to go to healthy town and get out of, toxic town, you know,
dysfunction.
you got to do the work within, and you got to learn about the disorder, if you are in one of these, and, dealing with this, and you have to do the work, and it's kind of scary, but at the same time it's very freeing, because now you have these boundaries that are so much better and peaceful, and anxiety free way to live, you know but
Well,
it's
because we're
necessary to
taught
do.
in order to keep the peace that we have to give up ourselves. We're taught if, of course, when we do try to lay down a boundary, the narcissist will get back at us, and then it'll just be this constant fighting. So what the codependent is used to doing is, oh, just be quiet to keep the peace. That doesn't
Placate.
work, because you're actually going against yourself. You're actually
Amen.
abandoning yourself to make
Yep.
someone else happy, or to quote unquote keep the peace. The problem is true peace can't be had until you defend yourself, until you say, I'm not comfortable with this, and you say how you feel and you honor your own voice. That's how peace is had. It took me so long to understand this. Once I started really doing that, I felt so much better honoring myself. That's when I felt most at peace, when I was being authentic and true and honest with myself, and then honest
Amen.
with others. That's how peace is achieved, in my humble opinion. It will never be if you're always people pleasing. You're always
Sacrificing
and
yourself.
sacrificing what works for you. That's never going to work if you have to give
Yeah.
something up or put yourself in harm's way just to keep the peace. Anyways, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but yeah.
Yeah, it's like when a codependent and a narcissist get together, they're like two broken people kind of fitting together. What you want are two whole people coming together and being one whole unit, instead of these broken pieces trying to fit into this crazy life of chaos of, back and forth and power plays and all that dysfunction, that's the thing. It's like you can't love anyone else until you love yourself first,
Yes.
and we weren't taught that,
No.
as children.
Mm-mm.
So we're having to relearn and having to draw those boundaries and learning how to self-cultivate, acceptance, to ourselves, and love and growth. And it takes a while, and first thing is to respect yourself and get out of the toxic relationships of all kinds, not just the romantic, but the friendships. And if you're working in a place with a toxic boss, you're going to have to make some changes, maybe get a different job or whatever, because like you said before, Trisha, it's like what you allow will continue.
Yes, it's really at the base of loving yourself, and it's what we learn when we're little. We just learn to just go along with things, and that's how, and we bring that into our, plus it's also, like you said, it's in jobs, it's in schools. I mean, this is, everywhere. So yeah, I think for me, that was when I first realized that I was doing that. That was the real shift. And I read a lot of books. You had mentioned projection. There's a wonderful book, if any of you that are watching this show, that I read that was wonderful, by Debbie Ford. It's called The Dark Side of the Light Chasers. It's fabulous. It's a short, easy read, and it really breaks down how projection works, and when you know that it's happening, when you're doing it or somebody else is doing it to you. It just helps you to understand so much. And then the other books that I read a few of Iyanla Vanzant's. I highly recommend her material. It's just from a street level life experience. She goes into all these scenarios of the very stuff that you and I are talking about, what happens to you when you are raised in an abusive situation as a child, and so much more. So those books I highly recommend for the codependent to look into and understanding themselves. I recommend those books. Yep. I think
Amen.
that they helped me tremendously. So
yeah, the one book that I think on my last show I brought it up was, codependent and narcissistic relationships. That, once again, Ross Rosenberg, the human magnet syndrome. This book really, it's called The Codependent Narcissist Trap, and it is a trap.
nice.
And this shows you the dynamics of a codependent and narcissistic relationship, and how dysfunctional and how natural it is for a narcissist to want a codependent, and how a codependent is natural to a narcissist, And, these books and these people, there's, the awareness the last 10 years have been growing so much. But, my theory is there can never be enough awareness if this type of disorder is, taking people down, taking families, marriages, friendships, jobs, you name it. It's a life destroyer, and it needs to be brought out because it is such a hidden, creepy disorder,
And it can, it can really it can really just cause a lot of harm to yourself and everyone in your surroundings when that's going on.
When you get involved with it, it's just like a daily struggle,
Yes.
and it's hurtful, and it's really, and even for the narcissist, that's getting the supply from you, they're still not satisfied. They're still going to go get supply and have affairs and do a whole bunch of crazy stuff, or, there's no boundaries for the supply, because it's like oxygen to them. They need that validation, because that when that gnawing emptiness, gets them, they're like, I got to go online. They're just, they need that, and so they're not content either, really, but the good thing is that codependence can heal. Narcissists, not so much. In our community, we all know that, even with the doctors, Ross Rosenberg, Dr. Romney, Dr. Les Carter, they know how hopeless and bleak it looks for the actual healing, because there's so much brain damage that is attributed to it through testing and just medical literature about this disorder.
This is perfect. This is perfect, because we're getting up to where we got to close up here. But this is perfect, because you had mentioned that you wanted to talk about complex post-traumatic stress disorder and the constant abuse as a child, and just in general, not just the constant abuse when this is happening, and what post-traumatic stress disorder looks like and all that. I would love to have another show where we just cover that subject, because
I would
that's
love
a
it
very
because
deep subject.
it's complex. It's called complex post-traumatic stress disorder, which
That's
is
what
a
it is,
little
complex.
which is a little bit different than the typical PTSD, because the complex part of it is a continual, daily, year after year type of abuse of of stress, to whereas typical PTSD is like a guy in war, and there's a bomb goes off, and they're they have shell shock. They used to call that back in the in the 40s and World War II, but it's called PTSD now. It's more of a one-time event with PTSD. Complex PTSD is like a
Continual.
continual dripping sink. The water keeps dripping, but
Yeah.
and that actually, yeah, we could talk about that. It's very, very serious, because that's how the damage happens in childhood from a covert narcissist parent. That it actually delays people. It makes people sick. Their immune systems get compromised. There's a whole host of things I'd love to talk about in our next show.
Great. I
You
would love
know,
that. I think that's going to be huge, because I know there's a lot of people that are suffering from that. So it's going to give them an opportunity to hear what we're talking about, and
absolutely,
gain
yeah.
some understanding.
It's taken NPD abuse to the biological level and physiology of what happens. It's like I said, it's an insidious, destructive disorder, and the people that go to counseling is not the narcissist. It's everyone around the narcissist trying to figure it out. So, yeah, I would love to
Oh,
talk about
yes.
that next show. Absolutely.
That would be great. Now, one thing I did want to mention, or at least bring up, I think you're going to be doing your own thing soon here. I think did you say you set something up on
Absolutely,
Facebook and you're
yeah.
working on that?
Yeah, I've got my my own page on YouTube. It's called NPD Survivors Limited, and right now it's basically a portal for information. I'm pulling it together for people that want to get advice from codependency to
Professionals,
legal
or yeah, right.
issues. Yeah, for
Yeah,
professional doctors, books, whatever. Right now, it's basically going to be a
resources, basically. Right.
resource. It's kind of like the Google for NPD abuse. That's kind of like the goal. But I'm also going to be doing shows on there, such as this. I'd love to have you on my show too, Trisha,
Oh, I
if
would
you
be
would.
honored. That'd be
Yeah,
fabulous.
yeah.
This is
I'll be.
so great. I'm so happy just doing this. Like, I've
I'm
been
here to
thinking
serve.
about
I'm
this
here
for
to
a
serve.
long time, and it's so interesting how we ended up talking. So I just think there are no accidents, and here we are. So it's awesome.
Amen. Yeah,
Oh,
and
this is so great.
it's all about healing, and using, what we've been through as adults, at this point in our lives, to help the next generation, or people our age or older, doesn't really matter, get through this,
And
and
heal, what you said, and heal.
know that they are okay, and that to have them understand it, because the more you understand about this disorder, you get it, and everything comes together, and you're like, that's why,
And you can make
so
better decisions. You can
yeah, absolutely.
better
Yeah, better.
decisions in your life that honor you.
Yeah,
You're
better
allowed to take
decisions.
care of yourself, you know?
Right. Self-love, better relationships, healthy relationships, not ones where you're just, suffering. And yeah, awareness is the key. And that's what we're doing out here.
Awesome. Thank you again for joining me. And I'm looking forward to our
You.
next talk. And yeah, it's going to be great. I think, yeah, we're on a good start here. I'm very excited. So
Awesome.
thank
Good.
you so much, Rob. It's wonderful talking to you. And I'll look forward to next time.
You got it. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. And we'll see you soon.